basketball on television, anything. And we've watched the WNBA fail with this as well. And I don't think they figured it out, frankly. All right? I don't think they figured it out. I don't think they have truly embraced the WNBA or USA basketball, that they have embraced who moves the needle. In fact,
zero momentum. That's exactly where USA basketball stands in the WNBA when it comes to promoting its biggest superstar. And this isn't some small social media slip-up. We're talking about the official announcement of the 2028 World Cup qualifying roster. The promotional graphics go live, and who's highlighted front and center? Alyssa Thomas and Chelsea Gray. No disrespect to either of them, they're elite talents. But when the biggest name in women's sports is on your roster, and she's pushed the background, that's not a mistake. That's a deliberate decision.
No Caitlin Clark on this. Introducing the 2028 USA Women's World Cup qualifying team. What in the world are we doing? Not only that, but you're in negotiations on a CBA right now that you would not be getting if it wasn't for the straight white girl that plays it for the Indiana Fever. Let's just be real. You wouldn't be getting it.
What makes this even more frustrating for fans who are drawn to the WNBA because of Caitlin Clark is the timing. The league is currently in the middle of CBA negotiations. They've just locked in a media rights deal worth more than $200 million. Attendance records were broken last season, and everyone knows what fueled that surge. Yet instead of capitalizing on that momentum, USA Basketball releases promotional material that seems to sideline its most marketable star. Fans notice immediately. The reaction in the comment section wasn't subtle. It was harsh and unfiltered.
So, this came out, and I mean, yeah, of course, right there. Seriously, here we go. Please start using your brains and promote Caitlin Page and Angel Reese next to Leah Boston. They're not going to do it, man. They're just not going to do it. You got plenty of people in the comments. Yeah, starting point guard has arrived. Right there. I mean, the fans know it. Are you ever going to advertise Caitlin Clark or nah? Sick and tired.
Now, here's where things really start to get interesting. FIBA, the International Basketball Federation, had no hesitation about who should be the face of the moment. When they released their World Cup qualifying promotional material, Caitlin Clark was front and center, wearing the USA jersey, impossible to miss. Same tournament, same roster, completely different marketing strategy that FIBA clearly understands the draw. The question is, why doesn't USA Basketball, or maybe they do understand, and simply choose not to lean into it? And if that's the case, you have to ask, why?
UConn Mafia, the UConn Mob, Sue Bird and Paige Beckers, and their agendas. Guys, you realize Caitlin Clark can make this team and she might play 7 minutes. There's a world, unfortunately, where that exists. And we all know if that happens, that's going to be what? Agenda. There she is right there. Right there. So everybody can clearly see in this World Cup marketing material, Caitlin Clark.
Then there's the Olympic roster situation from last summer. The selection committee included Dawn Staley and Jennifer Rosati, two figures closely tied to the established leadership circle in women's basketball. Both have long-standing influence within the sport and meaningful connections across the league. Despite being the most watched and talked about player in women's basketball, Caitlin Clark was left off the Olympic roster. At the time, the explanation centered on roster balance and the value of veteran leadership. But when you consider who was involved in the decision-making process and the relationships and history within that inner circle, it inevitably raises more questions. The optics, at the very least, leave room for debate.
Yeah, I mean, look, FIBA knows who people want to see. It's crazy as hell. And then after all the backlash against this, USA Basketball drops this little thing out here. And there's Caitlin. And by the way, they still put Angel Reese in the forefront. But at least it's better. I'm sorry, guys. Caitlin Clark would be like as big.
Sue Bird, the former UConn standout and WNBA legend, has never been shy about speaking on league matters. Meanwhile, Paige Buchers, the current UConn star, represents the next wave of influence from that same powerhouse program. When people mention the so-called UConn Circle, they're talking about the tight network of players, coaches, and executives who came through that system and now hold considerable influence across women's basketball. And networks like that tend to operate in predictable ways. They support their own. They promote their own. But when an outsider rises to a level of visibility and impact that surpasses anyone within that circle, it can naturally create friction, or at the very least, shift the balance of power.
And people, I do these CBA videos and people are like, what, do we care? And I'm like, well, I want to watch Caitlin Clark play. I want to watch Sophie Cunningham play. So yeah, I kind of hope there'd be a season, especially after this shit show that was last season. Right? But the WNBA feels the same way as USA Basketball because it's invaded and ate up with all these tentacles out there of the old
Sue Bird, the former UConn standout and WNBA legend, has never been shy about speaking on league matters. Meanwhile, Paige Buchers, the current UConn star, represents the next wave of influence from that same powerhouse program. When people mention the so-called UConn Circle, they're talking about the tight network of players, coaches, and executives who came through that system and now hold considerable influence across women's basketball. And networks like that tend to operate in predictable ways. They support their own. They promote their own. But when an outsider rises to a level of visibility and impact that surpasses anyone within that circle, it can naturally create friction, or at the very least, shift the balance of power.
Crazy. We're gonna see. I've contended the season's gonna come back. The players are gonna sign a CBA. We're already seeing there's real differing of opinions out there about the CBA now amongst players, and you can tell some of the players want to sign this new CBA. The one they got right now, they're ready to sign because they're bringing up, I want to make more money.
So what does this mean heading into the new season? A new CBA is on the horizon, and you can already sense a divide among the players. Some have said publicly they're ready to sign the current deal because they don't want to risk leaving guaranteed money on the table. And from a business standpoint, that's understandable. This is the strongest financial position the WNBA has ever been in. But that financial surge didn't happen in a vacuum. Much of it can be traced back to the unprecedented impact of one player. And yet, rather than structuring the league's marketing strategy around that undeniable reality, the messaging often spreads recognition evenly, as if every star carries the same level of influence. That tension between measurable impact and collective positioning could shape how this next chapter unfolds.
And it's because the whole league the whole league and USA Basketball is corrupted by a bunch of haters. The agenda they live by, Caitlin Clark doesn't check those boxes. Tell me what you think, black and white sports supporters. USA Basketball off to a great stop. The only thing worse than that would have been actually leaving her off the team, which I was about halfway bracing myself for because I thought, they could use a built-in, well, she was injured and we don't know if she's got, her stamina back, blah, 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 blah. I was bracing for it. I'm happy she made the team. Peace.
Caitlin Clark entered a league with a long-established culture, leadership structure, and identity. The WNBA has been shaped for decades by a core group of players, coaches, and decision-makers who built it from the ground up. Then Clark arrived and, almost overnight, changed the economic trajectory of the league. She brought record-breaking ratings, sold-out arenas, massive merchandise spikes, Millions of new viewers, many of whom weren't part of the traditional WNBA audience. That kind of disruption doesn't just change numbers, it shifts power dynamics. When a single player dramatically alters the business landscape, it forces uncomfortable adjustments. It challenges hierarchies. It complicates existing relationships. And not everyone embraces that kind of shift at the same pace. Fans point to several patterns. The Olympic roster omission, marketing materials that don't consistently center the league's biggest draw, physical play and officiating controversies during her rookie season, public messaging that often downplays individual impact in favor of collective narratives. Individually, each of these decisions can be explained. Together, they create optics that fuel skepticism. Then there's the structural reality. Many influential figures in women's basketball share long-standing professional relationships. Former teammates, coaching trees, collegiate pipelines, committee roles. That's not unusual in sports. Networks exist everywhere. But when those networks overlap with high-stakes decisions about visibility, opportunity, and playing time, fans are naturally going to question objectivity. Now look ahead to World Cup qualifying. Yes, Clark made the roster. That's significant. But fans will be watching closely. How is she used? How much does she play? Is she positioned as a centerpiece or as a role player? Because if she sees limited minutes, the narrative will write itself, regardless of the internal reasoning. The CBA negotiations add another layer. The league is negotiating from the strongest financial position in its history. Much of that momentum correlates directly with Clark's arrival. That creates an unavoidable tension. How do you balance collective growth messaging with the measurable impact of a single transformational star? This isn't about diminishing other players. It's about acknowledging market realities. International basketball appears more straightforward in its approach. Identify the biggest global draw and market accordingly. Domestic dynamics are more complex, shaped by history, relationships, and internal politics. Fans aren't blind. They see patterns. They compare messaging to metrics. And when there's a disconnect between what the numbers show and how the league communicates, trust erodes. The upcoming season will be telling, not because of conspiracy theories, but because consistency matters. If marketing, playing time, officiating, and messaging all align with performance and impact, the conversation shifts. If they don't, the criticism grows louder. At the end of the day, this isn't about resentment or identity politics. It's about business clarity. When a generational talent transforms your financial outlook, the question becomes simple. Do you fully embrace that reality or cautiously manage it? World Cup qualifier will offer more data points, and fans will be watching.